The Buccaneers appear to have one extremely motivated player on the defensive side of the ball. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credential member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It is a mock draft Monday, and we're going to be talking about some free agency grades, but we're going to take a look at how some of these mock drafts have changed after the first wave of free agency. But we're starting this one off with one of those additions that the Bucs made in that first wave of free agency, and that is, of course, the signing of Haason Reddick. So Reddick spoke to the media at the end of last week, and let me just say this. If that press conference doesn't get you excited about his arrival, I'm not really sure what will. I've gone through some of the numbers after it was announced that Reddick had agreed on a one-year deal to join the Bucs. He's sixth in the NFL in sacks since 2020, among the league leaders in pressures, among the league leaders in quarterback hits. But then came last year, the messy relationship with the Eagles, the trade to the Jets, which was an even messier situation up there. All of that led him to Tampa and essentially a one-year prove-it deal as he's entering his age 31 season. He had just one sack after missing a ton of time last year with the contract dispute and all the issues with the Jets. But now he sounds as motivated as anyone to go out and prove that he is still a premier pass rusher. Talking to the media, Reddick said, quote, "It's a fresh start. I know everyone is worried about last year, but last year is last year. I'm here now. Different mindset, different space. Just ready to put the past behind me and continue to move forward. What better place to do it than here?" The fit intrigued me the most after talking to Footy, which he's referencing linebackers coach Larry Foote, talking to Bowles, their vision for how they plan to use me here. That was really intriguing, something I knew I needed. Outside of that, I felt this was a team that was a couple short pieces away. I felt like I could come bring my knowledge, bring my abilities, blend that with the guys that's already here. You've got great pieces. You got Vita. You got the young guy, Yaya. So just knowing that I could come here and help out, I thought it would be fun, end quote. Reddick talked about his connection with Larry Foote, his connection with Todd Bowles being reasons that he was interested in coming to Tampa. But one last thing that he said that was really interesting and really, really stuck out to me. I actually was texting with Insider David about this interaction and kind of our interpretation of Reddick in that moment. But he was asked about other teams being interested and the fact that his agreement to come to Tampa came so quickly after the start of the negotiating window opening up. Reddick said, quote, "I had other teams that were interested. I would like to say it was a tough decision, but it really wasn't. The connections here, knowing who I would be around, that was something that I needed, right? After going through what I went through last year, being somewhere that felt like home, being somewhere where I knew I would be wanted, that was big to me. And I didn't feel like there was any other team that had what I was looking for compared to here," end quote. Of course, he talked about Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey and Yaya Diaby. But at the end of the day, this is the pairing that made so much sense for both sides. Most importantly, this was a player that did his homework. He knew what he was looking for in a team, and Tampa was the place that he wanted to go. So when they called, He already knew that he wanted to be here. He wanted to join this defense, to join the team, to be a Buccaneer. He mentioned that he watched a lot of Bucs games last year. He saw how close they were. So joining the team gives them a little piece of what they were missing last year. This is another example of how players want to be here. They know what has been built in Tampa. They know that the Bucs are going to be a competitive team, that they are going to get to the postseason, that they are going to likely win the division. You know, they see players like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Levante David taking less to stay a Buccaneer. They see a front office that rewards their own. And they also see free agents that come in on one-year deals, and then they see what happens when those players produce. Baker Mayfield came in on a one-year deal. He got rewarded with $100 million. Ben Bredeson got a one-year deal. He produced. He got rewarded with a contract extension. Greg Gaines, he's gotten a contract from the Bucs 3 straight seasons. This is a franchise that will give Haason Reddick, that will give him a big contract again after this season if he goes out and does what he does best. That's get the quarterback on the ground. That kind of stuff matters to players. They're willing to take the risk on a one-year deal for a good team, knowing what could be on the other side, rather than extra money from a bad team and then being stuck getting their butts kicked every single Sunday. Not having a chance to play in the playoffs, not having a chance to build off of a decent season because you were with a bad team. So even if you're playing well, you may not end up racking up the kind of stats that you would need to go back out into the free agent market and really cash in. Haason Reddick knows that he doesn't have to do that because if he puts up the numbers, he gets to stay in Tampa. Jason Light is going to reward that after the season is over. Go back to some of the really bad signings that the Bucs have had over the years. It was about a week ago that I brought up signings like Deshaun Goldson and Carl Nix and Alteron Werner. Those guys didn't come to Tampa to win. They came because of the paycheck. They came because the Bucs were willing to throw insane money at them to get them in Tampa to try to build a winner through free agency. That's not how the Bucs operate anymore. They build through the draft. Jason Light, Mike Greenberg, all of his scouts in underneath Jason Light, they all draft really, really well. And that's where the core of this team has come from. Again, I know Levante wasn't drafted by Jason Light, but Levante, homegrown. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr., Vita Vea, homegrown. Bucky Irving, the most explosive rookie of, outside of a quarterback in 2024, drafted. Rashad White, for his ups and downs, homegrown. That's how you build the team. And then you supplement with those free agents like Baker, like Bredeson, like Haason Reddick. So knowing what Reddick went through, with the Jets last year, knowing that he was frustrated with a bad organization, knowing that he had put the Bucs at the top of his preferred destinations. So when the Bucs called on Monday, boom, it was done. This guy went through and looked for certain things in these teams that would be interested in him. And no one checked all of the boxes except the Bucs. That's how a deal came together so fast. I highly recommend checking out his press conference on the Bucs channel on YouTube. It's about 14 minutes long, but he gave some really great answers and some great insights as to his process on the field, his process through free agency, how he got to the level that he is as a player, some of the trials and tribulations of what he went through. There was some really, really great stuff in there. But most importantly, you're going to see a player that wanted to be a Buccaneer. The last thing that he said was his message to Bucs fans. Quote, I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be in front of the crowd. If anything, I can't wait to get in front of the crew. And I want to hear the cannon go off a lot this year, man. I'm very excited. I hope the fans and the crew is excited as well. Looking forward to making this a great 50th, end quote. Yeah, you should definitely be excited about Haason Reddick's arrival. We're taking a look at some free agent grades. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, kids sports, in my case, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, all your investments, all of your spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals, which is what we're all really trying to do, right? Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL, for half off your first year. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who's cutting down the nets. Now, I don't think my Fighting Illini are going to make the same noise that they did last year. I'm kind of surprised that they're a 6 seed. But right now, Duke is the favorite at plus 280, followed by Florida at plus 380. They are red hot right now. Auburn drops to third at plus 500. Houston is at plus 600. But then we get to Alabama, who has the 5th best odds, all the way at plus 2,100. That's crazy. The FanDuel app is super easy to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around for those winnings to show up. They are there right away. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I always love the immediate reaction grades for free agency, since we, of course, have absolutely no idea how these players are going to perform on their new teams. I mean, go back a couple of years, the Jets got like an A+++ for signing Aaron Rodgers. That worked out super well. But it's kind of like how draft grades come out like 2 hours after the draft ends. So, no one knows how these draft classes are actually going to pan out, but we're going to grade them anyway. It's essentially just people's opinions on the prospects that they liked or didn't like and where they went. But we always have free agency grades, even though free agency isn't going to end anytime soon. That initial first wave is over with. So it has slowed down a lot, but I've talked numerous times on the show about the second wave of free agency, then the third wave of free agency. But here's the thing about free agency grades as it pertains to the Bucs. Their biggest splashes, just like last year, were mostly in-house guys. Chris Godwin, Levante David, Ben Bredeson. Yes, they got Haason Reddick. That was huge. But the other main players were retained from last year. They added Riley Dixon to help at punter. They signed Charlie Heck to replace Justin School. Anthony Walker replaces KJ Britt. Kendall Vildor replaces Tavier Thomas. But the big move guys were the ones that they kept, plus Haason Reddick. So going around the media world to see what they think of Bucs free agency moves, we're going to start with the USA Today and Jacob Kamenker. And he gave the Bucs an A-, saying, quote, "The Buccaneers spent most of the offseason retaining their own talent. No deal was more impressive than the 3-year, $66 million deal they agreed to with Chris Godwin, who reportedly turned down more money from the Patriots to go back to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay also addressed its need for a high-end pass rusher by inking Haason Reddick to a 1-year, $14 million deal. Overall, it's yet another quality start to the offseason for general manager Jason Light," end quote. PFF also gave the Bucs an A-. Now, They did their breakdowns by player. So they graded the player, based off of his wins above replacement, his 2024 player grade, but then also the contract that the players got compared to PFF's projected contract that they were going to get. Now, I will say the issue with the projected contract stuff was they have Chris Godwin's deal listed as good, but PFF projected him to get a 3-year, $65 million deal with, I think it was $50 million guaranteed. Well, he gets 3-year, $66 million with $44 guaranteed, but the actual deal that he could have gotten on the open market was closer to the 3-year, $90 million range. So PFF was way off on their projection compared to what Godwin was actually getting offered. But great, they have Godwin and Levante's deals listed as good. Reddick's deal was listed as average, but regardless of how their contract stacks up with the actual contracts, it's another A- grade for the Buccaneers. And then we have CBS Sports. They had a trio of NFL analysts. Tyler Sullivan, Garrett Podell, and Jordan Dajani gave the Bucs a B, saying, quote, remarkably, the Bucs were able to retain wideout Chris Godwin despite him getting to the open market. Even with a lot of teams vying for his services, he elects to stay put and maintain what is one of the better 1-2 punches at receiver between him and Mike Evans for Baker Mayfield. Tampa Bay also added to its pass rushing group with Haason Reddick on a 1-year, $14 million deal. This prove-it deal could be beneficial for the Buccaneers as they'll get a motivated Reddick playing for a bigger deal next offseason after a tumultuous season in New York, end quote. Not really sure where in there it justifies a grade of a B, but that's okay. Some grading systems are a little tougher than others. We move on to Yahoo Sports. Frank Schwab, I talked about him on the show not too long ago, but he gave the Bucs a B, which is actually shocking. Talking about the difference of people's grading scales, most teams, according to Schwab, got somewhere between a C and a D plus. So the Bucs are actually one of the higher graded teams on this list. But Schwab said, quote, while it came down to the wire, it's not a surprise Tampa Bay figured out a way to retain Chris Godwin and Levante David. Adding Haason Reddick was a worthwhile gamble, end quote. All in all, the Bucs are receiving some positive buzz about their moves, though the Sporting News' Vinny Iyer gave the Bucs a B, which is all well and good, but that B grade ranked them 14th in the NFL in free agency, basically just saying it was because their only outside move that was splashy was Reddick, while the rest of the players were just returning, which brings me back to my original point. We've gone full circle here now. The Bucs retaining their own players isn't a detriment, and it shouldn't be a knock against them when we get to free agency. Last year, we talked about it a lot. If any other team in the NFL had come away in free agency with a haul of Antoine Winfield Jr., Mike Evans, Baker Mayfield, Levante David, and Tristan Wirfs, they would have been talked about nonstop as the best offseason that any team could have possibly had. The Bucs did exactly that, but nobody cared because they were all in-house signings. They were all already Buccaneers. The same could be said this year. If another team, let's say the Patriots, for argument's sake, had come away with Chris Godwin, Haason Reddick, and Levante David, they would be talked about as a team that is on the cusp of going from a losing record to a wild card team. I'm not going to give them the division because they're in a division with Buffalo, but going from where they were to a playoff team because of those three guys, that's what they would be talking about on ESPN and NFL Network, on Good Morning Football, on NFL Live, all of those. The Bucs just did that, but they get knocked for it a little bit. Now, obviously, that's not everyone. Not everyone is dinging them for bringing back their own guys, and you can see that they are getting their respect for the most part in these free agent grades. But stop knocking teams for keeping their own players. Those are the kinds of franchises the players want to play for. That's why guys want to keep coming back to Tampa. They reward their own players, and players love being here because of that. Players love signing prove-it deals because they see that they'll get rewarded if they hold up their end of the bargain. Again, Baker Mayfield, he got rewarded. Ben Bredeson, he got rewarded. Jordan Whitehead, he didn't live up to his end of the bargain. He's not back. He didn't get rewarded. These guys know that they are going to get recognized for their work if they hold up their end of the bargain. So quit knocking teams for just signing their own players when those players would have made another team that much better, because you know that they would have. It's a Mock Draft Monday. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Wrapping things up here on a Mock Draft Monday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And let's see how some of these mock drafts are changing a little bit now with the big first wave of free agency over with. So the USA Today compiled a list of players being drafted in various mock drafts. Now that, needs have changed a little bit following the first week of free agency. And I'm not going to lie, it's exactly what I expected for the Buccaneers. So PFF has the Bucs taking Alabama linebacker Jahad Campbell. CBS Sports also has the Buccaneers taking Alabama linebacker Jahad Campbell. The Draft Network has the Bucs taking Notre Dame cornerback Benjamin Morrison, and the 33rd team has the Bucs taking Florida State corner Azariah Thomas. This is what I expected. The focus for the Bucs was going to shift from edge rusher to linebacker and corner following the signing of Haason Reddick. Now, some of you may already be freaking out at Morrison going at 19, where, when in so many different mock drafts, they still have him in the second round. Or if you're doing your own mock drafts on these simulators, he's falling to you in the second. I keep telling you all that's going to change. Once he has his private personal pro day, after he's back in football shape, once teams are invited there, they can see him work out. They can see that he is healthy. He is back to being what he was in terms of his physicality. He's going to skyrocket up those draft boards. He's not going to fall to the Bucs in the second round. So yeah, we all have fun taking him in the second round in these mock draft simulators right now, but he's not staying there. He is a top 20 pick if we are talking about pure talent. I've been saying that since like October, I think was when I texted the insiders and I said, just prepare yourselves now, because when it gets to draft season, I'm going to talk a lot about Benjamin Morrison. But with all that said, Jahad Campbell is a player that you are going to hear a lot about in the coming weeks as far as it is concerned with the Buccaneers. He is such a great fit for Todd Bowles' defense. He could very well be the future for the Buccaneers at the linebacker position. His versatility, playing inside and outside linebacker on any given play, makes him the kind of player that is going to be an absolute nightmare for opposing offenses under Todd Bowles. Like Reddick, Campbell is a New Jersey guy. He talked to us about at the Combine about it, that it's ingrained in their DNA. It's part of the culture that he grew up in to always have a chip on your shoulder. Very Baker Mayfield of him. He talked about how he loves playing in the Tampa 2 because he really enjoys dropping into coverage. He said a lot of teams overlook him as a coverage linebacker, and so that chip on his shoulder, he loves going out there and making them regret that. He plays off of that need to continuously prove himself. But he also said that while he loves making plays in pass defense, there's absolutely nothing better than getting to the quarterback. I'm a big fan of Campbell. I really am. I know I haven't talked about him much on here, because we've been so focused on the edge rushers. But Campbell in Tampa would be next level. You are getting a plug-and-play starting linebacker that is going to drastically improve the coverage at that position, but also has the ability to line up on the edge. For that matter, so does Reddick. So you have a three-headed monster here of, let's say the Bucs draft Jahad Campbell. Now you have this three-headed monster of Jahad Campbell, Haason Reddick, and Servassier Dennis that can all get to the passer. They can all play the run. They can all drop in coverage. And you can put that trio on the field at the same time, and the opposing quarterback isn't going to have a freaking clue what you're going to do, where the pressure is coming from, which one of these guys is blitzing, which one of these guys is dropping in coverage, which one of these guys is moving out into the flat. They're not going to have a clue because all of these guys can do all of those things. Now, Servassier Dennis's coverage, not great. Better than KJ Britt's, but not great, but he can still do it. So you have three different guys there that can line up at inside linebacker and outside linebacker. Now, are they going to put Haason Reddick at inside linebacker very often? No. I would say the odds of that, you're probably looking at maybe 1 or 2 snaps a game where they do that, but that's all you need. If you have Jahad Campbell out there and you can flip-flop him and Haason Reddick, you add Servassier Dennis as an additional blitzer. Like, there's so many different ways that you can play with that would just be so much fun in Todd Bowles' defense. Campbell is PFF's 10th ranked prospect and the top linebacker on their big board. He's ahead of guys like James Pierce and Mike Green, who we have talked about at the edge position. Donovan Iziriku from Boston College, another edge rusher that I know Bucs fans really, really like. He's ahead of him. He's ahead of Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan. Campbell was first among all linebackers in 2024 in coverage stops. He had a 76.3 pass rush grade, an 81 run defense grade, and an 80.1 coverage grade. Finished with over 100 tackles, an interception, and 2 forced fumbles in 2024. I wouldn't be mad at any of these 3 picks for the Bucs. I'm not quite as high on Thomas as I am some of the other corners in this draft. Obviously, Benjamin Morrison is way up there for me. But then, other guys like Darian Porter, I really like him. Kobe Bryant out of Kansas. That dude is so much fun. I would love to see the Bucs take a chance on him on day 2. Maybe you might even be able to get him early on day 3. But I would understand the pick of Thomas for sure. 6'2", 200 pounds. I 100% get it. He's got the length, the size that you want in that Todd Bowles defense. He's going to be a great cornerback too for some team. I just think 19 is way too high for where he's probably actually going to go in this draft. I think he's going to be a second round kind of guy. But hey, it only takes one team to believe that you're worthy of that first round pick. And to be honest, there's only about 12, 14 guys that are actually being graded as a first round talent. So there's going to be second round players taken on day 1. It's just a matter of which ones and that's what's going to make draft night, at least the first night of the draft, really, really fun, is because as soon as those 12, 14 first round graded guys are off the board, all bets are off. It's open season. Anybody can go at any time. But on the flip side of that, there's going to be second round talent that goes in day 3. Because, and I'll continue to say it over and over, because not everybody listens to the shows an everydayer. So they may not have heard me say this before, but that's where the strength of the draft is. You have so much good talent where guys that are going to go in the 3rd and the 4th round this year would have gone in the 2nd round last year. But, first rounders are the elite talent isn't as deep as it's been the past couple of years. So there's that little bit of elite talent up at the top, but then there's a huge amount of really, really good talent. That's why I keep talking about how the Bucs are going to be able to get a starting player in the 4th round. They might even get a starting caliber player in the 5th round. This is going to be one of those situations where you could see Jason Light trade back out of 19 and try to collect some more picks because there is so much really good talent in this draft. They don't have a 6th round pick, so you could see him drop down to 24, 25, try to pick up an extra pick or two, and then still be able to get somebody who's kind of on that same level talent-wise. Now, all that said, if Jahad Campbell's sitting there at 19, don't trade out. Take him. Take him because he is one of those first-round talent guys. He is one of those elite talent players. But he drops in these mock drafts because he's of his position. You know, an off-ball linebacker, teams do not value that nearly as much as they value the edge rushers, the corners, the wide receivers, the offensive linemen. But Jahad Campbell is definitely one of those elite talent guys. That's a name we are going to talk about a lot on the show over the next month because the NFL draft is just a little bit over 5 weeks away. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Please check out everything going on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @JYarcho_Bucs. Make sure that you are subscribed with the notifications turned on YouTube, as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.